Welcome, traveler. Get ready to level up in fantasy football. Join Mike and Evan and a special guest every week as we break down some of the most important topics in fantasy football, the NFL, and help you win dynasty championships. Let's get into it.
Evan, you enter on a dungeon room. There's painted walls that are coming together into a big shape that says NFC East. And hey, we're going to talk about the NFC East this week. It's good to see you. I'm excited to be back. I am FF Mike Cash. You can find me there on Twitter. It's with a K. And I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Evan, with his beautiful face. Evan, how are you?
What's up, Mike? My voice is a little tired. I was in meetings all day, talking all day, so I'm going to try and let you do most of the talking here.
You were just hooking and jamming. I get it. We'll be joined in a little bit by Colin from Fantrax. We're really excited to have him with us. He is also an Eagles fan, so I'm going to be a little outvoted here. But while we wait for him to get here, Evan, what is your favorite fruit?
Ooh, okay. So I'm going to go with a fruit that most people probably haven't heard of, and I'm going to say a jackfruit, which is fantastic. First time I had it was when I was over in Thailand. Absolutely love it. You can do so many different things with it. But the everyday fruit that I'm going to go with is an apple. Just a nice, crisp Honey Crisp. Personally, that's my go-to. I know some people are the Granny Smith fans. Some people are the Fugees. They had some Cosmic Crisp, I think, that just came out. It's like a new hybrid apple.
New apple just dropped.
What can I say?
That's crazy. There's a new one every year, just like an iPhone. My favorite, it's going to be basic. It's summertime. I like watermelon. It grows on a vine. It's technically a fruit. That's good enough for me. You like cutting it up. It goes great at a barbecue, like we talked about last week. Just, there's a lot of good things to do with it. But while we wait for Colin to join us, let's hop into...
And now it's time for news and notes.
Ramondre Stevenson signed for 4 years, $36 million in running back money. That is $1 billion. I think it's more than Patrick Mahomes makes if you account for that. Evan, did Ramondre Stevenson move in your dynasty rankings because of this?
Move? No, not really. I mean, the Patriots still have a bad offensive line. They still have a bad offense. Should put them behind in a lot of games for the most part. They went and signed a receiving back in Antonio Gibson, which when Ramondre was at his peak, he was getting the receiving line share, which doesn't make me feel great there. But yeah, I mean, longevity, he should be around. Could be good for the offense, give some stability to Drake May.
Yeah, sounds great. All right. We are joined by Colin. Colin, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry the link was a little bit touch and go there. We're talking about Ramondre Stevenson.
Oh, I mean, that's a good place to start, I guess, right? But yeah, sorry about that. Technical difficulties, but we're in here now.
That's all right. We just got to make a sacrifice to the technical difficulties, which is every once in a while. Let's talk a little Ramondre real quick, though. So he just signed his big extension. Evan says it doesn't move his dynasty price at all because there's still the Antonio Gibson stealing the passing work. And, I mean, running back contracts are normally not that guaranteed, and there's a pretty easy out in a couple of years. Did this move your dynasty rankings for him at all, or is he still firmly in RB2 territory?
I mean, I think RB2 is a good place to start for Ramondre. I don't think it obviously hurts him. Longevity is a great thing, right? I think a lot of people were nervous when they brought in Antonio Gibson, but that's not a long-term deal. For them to get this done actually ahead of time, in my opinion, for a running back of all positions was a good thing. This guy's 26 years old, which kind of shocked me a little bit. Yep. Feels like he's 24. We haven't seen much of Ramondre, only one full season. But this guy's capable of, 1,000 yards rushing. He's definitely a bruiser. I definitely think he's at this point, he's a good veteran with Drake May. I think I heard Evan say that. But yeah, I think it's confidence, especially with a regime that isn't really new, but kind of is. Gerard Mayo knows who this guy is. So for them to give him the money before his contract expires at the end of this year, only good things here.
Yeah.
And on the age thing, he's the same age as Josh Jacobs. Let's remember that.
Right.
That is wild.
As wild as that sounds, same age right there.
A lot more tread on the tires, too.
Yep. That's what's going to happen with, Tyrone Tracy. Who are the other super old running backs, Evan? You know who I'm talking about?
Ray Davis.
Ray Davis. That's who I was thinking about. He's approximately, I think he might be 26 already. But let's move on a little bit. The Jaguars. Evan, this is big for you because you build stadiums in your free time. They have struck a deal with the city for a new stadium, $625 million. That is a lot of money. Does this do anything for you, or you're just excited to talk about stadium building because it's your hobby?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously working for the city here, working with the stadium and the Titans, it's a lot of fun to do that. But yeah, they're not getting a brand new stadium. They're getting a retrofitted stadium, which I think says a lot right there. It's the city is investing in the team, but they're not saying, oh, we're going to give you a brand new stadium. We're just going to do as much retrofit. And they still have to go, I think, 2026 to a different location. They're talking about the Swamp, which would be a lot of fun. See them in Gainesville as a potential place for them to move for a season. But yeah, I mean, like I said, knowing the Titan Stadium, what the city gave up, what the state gave up to keep the Titans here, it definitely seems like Jacksonville got the Jags a lot cheaper.
It's not London.
That's what
it's not London.
I thought they were going to London. Like the buzz around the league and everything that they were trying to do, they're talking about sending teams overseas. I'm glad to see Jacksonville stick around, and Ash and Cooper are too. Let's get into
the meat and potatoes.
All right. First and foremost, we have in the NFC East the Dallas Cowboys, and Ash is fired up about them. They have re-added Ezekiel Elliott. They drafted Tyler Guyton, and then they also drafted Cooper Beebe, who, Evan, as our offensive line whisperer, I'll turn that over to you. Tell me what these additions with the subtractions do to the offensive line.
Yeah, so Cooper Beebe is a really, really interesting pick there to be able to anchor that interior of the offensive line. I don't know if it's a foregone conclusion at this point that Tyler Smith stays at guard, but I think most likely he ends up staying at guard, which really solidifies the interior of that offensive line. You get three very good offensive linemen. On the interior, you get Tyler Guyton. Obviously, they lost a lot in the offseason with losing Tyler Biotish at center, so they're replacing him, losing the often injured Tyron Smith, who, when he was healthy, was a Pro Bowl tackle, but obviously wasn't healthy very often. So what does Dallas do? They continue, as they have done over many, many years recently, to continue to invest in that offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, as we wait for Cash to come back here, the Cowboys, in my opinion, if they're going to keep Dak there, they have to keep that offensive line healthy. And, the offensive line is only one of the holes, in my opinion, for the Cowboys to, address this offseason. And you're not, I know everyone's looking at running backs, especially when we have our fantasy football manager hats on, but the running back is nothing if that offensive line is as bad as it has been or injured and banged up. Same with Dak Prescott. I mean, he can't maintain his value if he doesn't have a clean pocket. So it was nice to see them, address that, but this just feels like a turnstile offensive line over the years now. There's just been guys coming and going, but it for them to invest so highly in the draft, nothing but good things there.
Yeah, I mean the wide receiver position definitely needs a little bit of love as well in that offense. It's CeeDee Lamb or bust for the most part. Ferg is most likely going to get some workload, as we've seen out of Cowboys tight ends over these years. And then you start trying to look into that team and trying to look at the schedule. I don't know if it's that favorable of a schedule. I would probably put it as a neutral, not really playing too much into my decision making with that. Do you have any thoughts on the schedule and if that sways any kind of positions you're going after for the Cowboys?
I'm actually looking at it now. I hate that they start on the road. It always feels like the Dallas Cowboys should start at home. And not only are they starting on the road, but they're starting in Cleveland, and that defense is no joke. And then, they play the Saints at home, which is nice. I think that's an easy win. I'm not a huge Saints fan, but then they have to host the Ravens. I mean, we could be looking at a 1-2 Dallas Cowboys team. But as far as fantasy football goes, maybe some negative game script with these tough defenses. So it's not like the blowout against the New York Giants to start the season last year, where you were praying your guys scored early and then, they kind of take a back seat. So I don't really look too much at schedule long term. I glance at the playoffs a little bit, the fantasy football playoffs, that is. But, anything can happen. If you look at schedule, like, oh man, all my guys are on bye week 12. Some of those guys might not even be healthy or playing at that point. So I really take into account like the first month or so. If a guy has a pre-existing injury, I look at that a little bit. When could they be back? Like a TJ Hawkinson, even like a Jonathan Brooks heading in to his rookie season with a torn ACL. But as far as these guys, I mean, the Dallas Cowboys you're drafting are studs. You're going to start Dak Prescott. You're going to start CeeDee Lamb. A couple of the other guys, I doubt you're even starting anyway. So the schedule doesn't mean too much to me until we even see them play a little bit this season.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a pretty nice buy window for some of the offense after the first 6 weeks. We talked about the first 3. After that, they get the Giants. It's going to be a big spike week for a lot of them. We could see Zeke have 45 carries for 90 yards. It'd be a great time. And then they play the Steelers, tough defense, Lions, tough defense, 49ers, tough defense. Like, there's a possibility here that we expect these fantasy assets to be studs, and then they just don't turn into what we want them to turn into. But on the Zeke note, Evan, offensive line moves, we always talk about how much that can impact a running back in the game script. Ezekiel Elliott hit career lows the last 2 years in his efficiency. Are we expect like that's just the new Zeke and he is a plotter that makes Najee Harris look fast, or like is there a possibility of a bounce back in 2024?
No, he's a plotter that you're hoping to fall in for a touchdown.
Yep.
I feel very, very confident saying that.
Yep. Still, he's being drafted outside the top 30 running backs right now. Like, as a low-end RB2 on just gross volume alone, I statted out the Cowboys the other day. 817 rushing yards and 269 receiving yards, and then you're just praying for touchdowns every week. Like,
one thing on that, I don't understand how people can be begging the Cowboys to have a running back that's really not Zeke. But then the Tony Pollard hate, I think, has gone a little too far. The guy broke his leg 9 months before last season and then played in every game. Over 270 touches. Maybe did he hit 300 touches last year, Tony Pollard?
Are we including targets or receptions?
Receptions. I think he hit 300 touches. I mean, I wish Tony Pollard was still a Dallas Cowboy. Yeah, I think if Tony Pollard was on the Dallas Cowboys, people would feel a lot different. I don't know why him going to Tennessee actually makes people feel worse about Tony Pollard. He got the offseason contract, but if he was returning on the Dallas Cowboys, I think a lot of people would feel a lot better about him. I don't really have any interest in Zeke or Rico Dowdle at this point. You're hoping they fall into the end zone. I don't really trust either of them as a runner. But with the ADP, of course, I think Dowdle is a nice dart throw. But I'm going to be looking elsewhere for guys that are actually going to play on my fantasy teams.
100%. I think it's pretty clear, and we don't really need to dive into the Cowboys. Dak, stud, draft him. QB1, you're going to use him. CeeDee Lamb, stud, draft him. You're going to use him. I don't think we have any concerns about either of them. Would anybody like to raise concerns about those two players? Or
I have a personal, gripe with Dak Prescott. He averaged over 21 fantasy points leading into the fantasy football playoffs last year, and then was the QB 32 in Week 15, 7.1 fantasy points, and I got bounced from my home league solely because of him. A little bit because of the Michael Pittman concussion, but I don't think I can have Dak Prescott on my team this year simply because of that.
You should know better. It's the Cowboys. They're going to be really good until November 30th. That's the cutoff. Yeah. But
with Dak here, let's talk about that, because the question for me, and I think it's like a 90-10 that he ends up staying, but the question is long term, are the Cowboys, one, going to pay him with their cap situation and everything that they're going through? Two, is he good enough to be able to get the Cowboys to a Super Bowl? Because every Cowboys fan out there wants to get back to the Super Bowl. They remember the 90s. They remember that run that they went on where they were absolutely just racking wins off left and right. And I think that's really a question in a lot of Cowboys fans' mind. I've talked to many of them begrudgingly, but talked to many Cowboys fans, and they question whether Dak is the quarterback that can get them to a Super Bowl.
I tell you what, he might not be the quarterback that is the reason they get to a Super Bowl, but he can definitely be in the car while they're driving there. So I don't think he's the issue there. I think the issue is just the coaching staleness that happens year after year and the inability to get playmakers the ball. But
I think a question I have real quick at the quarterback position with the Cowboys. I mean, you have to wonder, we saw Aaron Rodgers go down early last year and Garrett Wilson just absolutely trucked his way, towards the end of the season. He had to start Garrett Wilson. CeeDee Lamb, do we feel good if Trey Lance has to come in?
Good? No. Okay. I
I
mean,
mean, you're not sitting CeeDee Lamb, but these
Yeah.
are the things I think about when I'm drafting studs. What happens if Joe Burrow goes down? I like Jake Browning. Trey Lance, I'm not so sure.
but did we like Trey Browning this time last year? Probably not.
No, that's
Or
true.
Jake Browning. But
True.
Yeah. So now we're looking at Trey Lance. Like, there's an opportunity for him to come in, be the guy, and then now that could be a quarterback controversy moving forward. I don't know. I think Lance still has a little bit of juice. We've only seen him play a couple of times, and he looked adequate. But Evan, you look like you have thoughts.
Well, yeah. So I was going to say, usually when a star wide receiver loses their quarterback, you end up trying to look at somewhere around an 80% value hit when it comes 80% of their value. So that would put him squarely in the range of looking at somebody around the Marvin Harrison Jr., the Puka Nakua, the Garrett Wilson range. So if Dak goes down, would you feel comfortable moving CeeDee Lamb at that point for one of those three wide receivers? I think that becomes the question that I have.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is going to try to just sell CeeDee Lamb, or they're not starting CeeDee Lamb. But when you're weighing those options early on, like Justin Jefferson right now, Sam Darnold gets benched. Are you going to feel good about JJ McCarthy? This doesn't make or break whether I'm drafting CeeDee Lamb. I actually think he's the number one overall pick in one QB leagues. But just something to think about. We could see Trey Lance here if there's a contract hiccup, if Dak gets hurt. It should be interesting.
Can't wait to see it. I really hope we see Trey Lance again, because I just need the vindication that he's either good or bad. I'm tired of the twilight zone we're living in.
Mike, how much have you looked into the multi-year contracts for the Cowboys?
Oh,
probably zero. Probably zero, right?
No,
Not much.
I've looked at them. There's It's like 7 players under contract 2026.
Oh, it's quite concerning, especially considering the fact that you have to pay CeeDee Lamb.
Yep.
You have to pay Ferguson in 2026. So that's going to be a contract. You're going to have Zach Martin coming up after this season. That's going to be a big one as well. If they decide to keep him, probably will. You're going to have DeMarcus Lawrence. You're going to move into Micah Parsons in 2026. Like, we're talking about prime players that are going to command big dollars. So we see this all the time. We just saw it happen this offseason with Josh Allen. Quarterback signs a giant deal, starts having higher cap space. Now they don't start backfilling around them because they're allocating so many resources to the quarterback position. Does that impact your thoughts on Dak?
You heard it here first. Dak Prescott is falling down. It's the end of him. Ash agrees. There's just nothing. Okay, one moment.
Yeah, I to that point, I think Dak Prescott is, it's going to take Jerry Jones needing to, let someone else run the business per se. But I think Dak is gone. They paid him last when it came to Zeke, him and Cooper a couple years ago. And when you name all the players you just named, I'd rather pay all of them before I pay the quarterback. That's not to say Dak Prescott doesn't deserve to get paid, but when it comes down to giving out contracts on the Dallas Cowboys, it might be time for them to take the route of, hey, we need to get cheaper and younger at the quarterback position and try to win with someone else. And maybe a team out there likes to go the route that the Buccaneers and the Rams went about translating a starting quarterback into their team and going the distance. That could be something we see with Dak Prescott.
Yeah, Dak Prescott is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2025, and everything's going to be sunshines and rainbows, and everything's going to be okay. I did want to talk before we move off the Cowboys about Brandon Cooks a little bit. He's still going off the board outside the top 36 wide receivers. It's enormous passing volume in Dallas right now. We're seeing, what was it last year? 630 attempts, 640, somewhere around there. Like, this is just a chance for the Cowboys to continue to air it out. Do you have any interest in Brandon Cooks in redraft managed leagues, Colin?
Interest? I'm not circling his name, putting a star next to it, but this is the Dallas Cowboys, and they are typically a high-scoring offense, and nothing really changed there. Do I think he's going to be second in targets, second in receptions, second in everything behind CeeDee Lamb? No, I actually think that's going to be Jake Ferguson. So if I'm targeting a pass catcher not named CeeDee Lamb on the Cowboys with significant draft capital, it's going to be Jake Ferguson. But as far as, building up my bench, I don't know if he's going to make it in a 10-team league. 12-team, I could add Brandon Cooks there, yeah, for sure. But he's one of those guys I need to see how it plays out first. He had a couple good weeks last year. This guy's getting older, though. But, I don't know who else Dak Prescott's going to throw to. So, maybe we do see a little bit of a, hey, it's weird to say, like a post-hype Dallas Cowboys Brandon Cooks sleeper year for him.
Yeah, he hit career lows in target share last year, which was interesting to see given the amount of volume that was going around. There's no one else on the classic someone has to catch passes. Someone has to catch these other 350 attempts that Dak's throwing out. But it's probably enough Cowboys talk for two Eagles fans. Let's move down to your guys' favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles. They added a new starting quarterback in Kenny Pickett, new starting running back in Saquon Barkley, and they extended A.J. Brown. They extended Devontae Smith. We talk about, like, all of these contracts are coming up. The Eagles have handled it masterfully. They extend their good players. They let the bad ones leave. So with all of these new additions, did the contract extensions do anything for Brown or Smith for you guys? Or, like, you'd already circled them, penciled them in, they're going to be Philadelphia Eagles for life?
So the A.J. Brown extension to me feels like just spreading out the money. I don't know how much longer A.J. Brown's going to be here with, he has a history of knee issues. We saw him miss the playoff game last year. He has a little bit of an injury history, but he's obviously still playing at an elite level when he is available to this team, has a great relationship with Jalen Hurts. I don't think A.J. Brown is going to finish his career with the Philadelphia Eagles. I could see him, sign a one-year deal here or there. But I think he's at least a Philadelphia Eagle for 2 years at this point. Devontae Smith, it was nice to see. It was better for me as an Eagles fan to see him get paid early, given the other contracts that were handed out to wide receivers this year. That's Howie Roseman getting in early on the contract. But as far as fantasy value goes, I think we're still cemented in a 1A, 1B situation here where it's pretty obvious that A.J. Brown is the go-to target for this team when both are on the field. But as far as looking at other pass catchers on the team, it's also nice to see that they didn't really, well, not nice as an Eagles fan, but the wide receiver 3 position is still up for grabs. Is it Paris Campbell? Is it Anais Smith, who they drafted? Dallas Goedert doesn't really excite me for fantasy football, just given the other tight ends out there. But I think those two are really the guys that I think their values are just very clear at this point. Now, we do have Saquon Barkley catching passes, so
that's fair.
That could play into it a little bit here.
The wide receiver 3, if I'm the Eagles GM, it's Johnny Wilson. He's a unique player that brings something to the defense that they're going to have to account for. You can't just throw a linebacker on him. He's too fast. You can't just throw a corner on him. He's too tall. Like,
in the red zone, absolutely. He should be on the field. He should at least just be out there.
Just put him there. He's the perfect go run a go route and make the defense chase you. So I'm all in with Johnny Wilson as the wide receiver 3. Evan, let's talk about a couple of their losses. So they lost Jason Kelsey. Love him at center. They lost DeAndre Swift. I don't think they cared given Barkley came in. And they lost Marcus Mariota and had to go to Kenny Pickett, which might actually be a downgrade, which is hilarious. Do you think that with the Jason Kelsey retirement that the tush push is going to lose any viability, or it's just you still have a powerlifting quarterback pushing the pile?
Yeah, you 100% still have a powerlifting quarterback that's just pushing the pile forward. You also now have an actual running back threat that can also power the ball through the offensive line. The real question for me is Cam Jurgens going to step up? Supposedly, per most reports, he was the one that Jason Kelsey stand for to be able to take his job, to be able to groom him. He looked really good his first year in the league. Last year, there was definitely some question marks on Cam Jurgens. So I think that's something that definitely needs to be figured out. And then who the heck is going to play right guard for the Eagles this year? That's another question. Obviously, to have a successful tush push, you got to have good interior offensive linemen. You got to be able to get that push. I still think they have one of, if not the best tackle tandem in the league with Mailata and with Lane Johnson. Absolute just freaks on the outside. They both deserve every penny that they're getting right now. I was just pulling it up. Mailata, 3rd out of 81 tackles in the NFL last year in PFF grade. Wayne Johnson 13th, which, seems a little low, but he's getting a little older. So, I can understand that and get behind it. Hopefully the Kellen Moore offense unlocks this a little bit more, and we don't see what happened in the second half of the season, because every single game it made me want to just find a bottle somewhere.
Are you saying that you don't just want to watch the entire interior offensive line get bullied and Jalen Hurts run for his life? That sounds great.
I mean, if he's on my fantasy team and he's running, getting them those rushing points, love to see it.
Be a great time. The values of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith continue to excite me because it feels like they're still somehow underrated. Like A.J. Brown, despite all the crashes, oh my lord, my dogs are so excited.
He's excited too.
They're fired up. This is the most excited they've ever been for fantasy football. I love it. But A.J. Brown continues to be a producer, but he's going off the board like wide receiver 6 or 7 range. Like sometimes Marvin Harrison Jr. goes over top of him, which is hilarious. And then Devontae Smith, he's just always underrated as a wide receiver 2 on your fantasy teams. I think he's in the wide receiver 18 range right now, after guys like Jalen Waddle, and in the same range as Malik Neighbors. Like, go ahead, take a swing on Devontae Smith. And Colin, I want to ask you, where do you value Devontae Smith in relation to Waddle and Neighbors?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at these, I call them a 1B, so we'll just call him the B receiver. I mean, there's an obvious elite threat in front of this guy. We see this with T. Higgins. We see this with Waddle. You have to look at the quarterback. And when you're doing that, Jalen Hurts stacked up against Tua, stacked up against Derek Carr. I mean, I'm going to go after Jalen Hurts as B receiver in that case. That's what I look for when I'm targeting those guys. It's not to say that Chris Olave is going to have more targets than Devontae Smith. I think that's going to happen. Jalen Waddle could have more targets than Devontae Smith, but what kind of quality targets are they? Chris Olave, I think last year had 136 targets, but a lot of them sailed over his head. A lot of them fell short. They were hard to watch. I had him on plenty of teams. Devontae Smith, I'm confident, can come down with the ball, can catch the basket cast as he's running down the field with elite speed. So when it comes to those guys, I think a lot of people, a lot of fantasy managers look and say, well, Chris Olave is the wide receiver 1 on the New Orleans Saints. I'm taking him. I don't know. I actually think Devontae Smith is a better pick. Jalen Waddle, it's hard to say now because they ran so much last year. I actually think that levels out a little bit. And I think the Eagles are going to run more this year, or just have a better run game, I should say. Saquon Barkley is going to break off more 10, 20, 30-yard runs than DeAndre Swift could last year. And that even speaks to the tush push a little bit. I don't think we're going to see that as much near the goal line because I think Saquon Barkley is going to finish runs more. But back to your original point, when you're looking at those guys in that range, it comes down to the quarterback for me. And it's obviously Jalen Hurts is head and shoulders above some of those guys. So that's how I make my decision in that range.
That makes a ton of sense. Evan doesn't want to get me started on Chris Olave. I have a warpath out against him, and the Twitter streets hate me for it, but that's okay. The backup running back in Philadelphia right now. So they just drafted Will Shipley, who a lot of people are head over heels about. Kenny Gainwell is the Kenny G that everybody knows in their heart. Like, how do you value each of those players? I'll let Evan go first, and then Colin, if you want to follow it up.
You don't. I mean, it's as simple as that. Like, I get it. You can make the argument the Eagles offense historically has run 3 running backs. It's historically been a triplicate in the backfield, but you don't go out and pay Saquon Barkley that much money. You pay Saquon Barkley that much money to win in the playoffs. So there will be a little bit of timeshare, but he should be clearly getting the lion's share. Like, if Saquon is not getting 70% of the snaps in the backfield, why? Like, the question of every Eagles fan is going to be, why did we pay him? Why did we bring him in?
Yeah, I think to go along with that point, you look at these running backs last year, even like a guy like Rachaad White saw such a heavy workload down there in Tampa Bay. I don't necessarily think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to rotate guys in. I think they looked at a team like the San Francisco 49ers and said, we need a guy like Christian McCaffrey that can do it all and can play a ton of snaps, can be out there a ton. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, I think people do, but they're not saying it out loud, is just the change of New York Giants offensive line to Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. Saquon Barkley isn't going to get hit behind the line of scrimmage nearly enough, or not nearly enough, nearly as often as he did in New York. He's not going to be running for his life behind the offensive line. There's going to be massive gaps, massive holes for him to run through. So as many times as they can have him on the field, even with the opportunity to touch the ball, they're going to. Now, some freak accidents have happened in Saquon's career. It can happen again, obviously. Knock on wood that it doesn't. But if he were to go down, I still don't really value any of these guys behind him as true handcuffs to him. I do think at that point they rotate Will Shipley, Kenneth Gainwell, who's in the final year of his deal. We've seen them do that before in the past. I think they would do that again, maybe even bring in another veteran. They think they brought in Tyrion Davis-Price. Maybe he gets some run there. But Saquon is going to push for the most touches in the NFL this year. I truly believe that. And when you have a guy that special, RB1 potential overall, absolutely.
Yeah. Kellen Moore just gave Austin Eckler, he was on pace for 307 touches over a 17-game stretch. Obviously, he dealt with injuries himself. If Saquon Barkley is a little better than Austin Eckler, which we expect him to be at this stage of his career, we could see 320, 330 carries or touches in general throughout the season.
Well, Austin Eckler just came out in an interview the other day that said, I don't like to carry the ball that much. I think Saquon actually has something to prove, and I think he hears the noise of you're a traitor going to the Eagles. I think he's going to be running angry for his hometown team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Tackled him in high school. Fun fact.
Oh.
Back in the day. Yeah.
And he lived to tell the tale.
Well, it was when he was like a junior and I was a senior, so I had 70 pounds on him, but good times. Speaking of Austin Eckler, let's talk about the Washington Commanders and all of their glory. They added Marcus Mariota, probably not going to start for very long, if at all. Jaden Daniels, number 2 overall pick. They added our boy, Austin Eckler. Zach Ertz, the ghost of him at this point. They added some interior offensive line help. Drafted Ben Sinnott, who everybody thinks is George Kittle. And then they took the better McCaffrey brother in Luke McCaffrey. They lost Sam Howell, RIP. He was just too much of a dog. They lost Curtis Samuel, who sneakily second most targets on the team last year. So a lot of targets to go around there. And then Antonio Gibson and Jacoby Brissett. Evan, we were talking about this before the show, and I want to air it out in the public for everybody to see. I was doing my NFC East projections, and I thought I was done. And then I was pulling up the show sheet ahead of time. And then I was like, hey, they just changed OCs into Cliff Kingsbury. I just want to see, is this in line with his historical precedent? I normally do that. For some reason, I skipped it with the Commanders because I have daddy brain. And I look at it. Cliff Kingsbury has never ran an offense with less than 575 passing attempts. I statted Jaden Daniels out for like 450 because that's a very reasonable number for a mobile rookie quarterback. What is the middle ground that we can meet? Do we think Cliff Kingsbury sets a new career low? Do we think Jaden Daniels enters the NFL and all of a sudden attempts 1 million passes? Where is the landing zone there?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely look at historically what he's done, and historically he's had mobile quarterbacks as well. You look at what he did previously in college, you look at what he did in the NFL on top of it, and then you start thinking about everything that the people that don't like losing money, aka Vegas, has been putting out there as well. And you start trying, that's what I was just trying to do right here, is just trying to pull up his passing yard number. And if I'm remembering correctly, here we go, 3150. All right. If you're going to tell me he's going to have 570 pass attempts?
Oh, he's going over 3150 if he has 570.
Yeah, no, 100%. So you start thinking about it and you start figuring out, well, Vegas probably has bookmakers that are smarter than me sitting here. And you probably say it's going to be some middle ground here, probably going to be going over, but he also has a rushing total set at 550. So that's where you're absolutely just making the hay with him. You're going to be making the points, getting as much as you can on the ground. And every Commanders fan that you talk to just thinks that they just got RG3's rookie season and just hope that they're not going to have the injuries that they did with RG3.
It was going to be a record-setting season. I think didn't he still set the rookie rushing record? Or somewhere around there?
At the time, I think it was around there, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been broken since then.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, to talk about the rushing total, hilarious that the number's set at 500 because he has, in his college career, a little over 11 attempts a game. Let's say he plays 17 games this season. You're telling me that he's going to get 180 to 190 attempts to break 500 yards? That's 2.5 yards a carry. That's easy money. So if I'm betting any money on Jaden Daniels, it's that rushing total right now. Colin, what does Jaden Daniels entering the room do for the pass catchers in the room? We've seen the idea Terry McLaurin is quarterback proof because he's played with such, let's call it an interesting cast of characters, but a lot of those were gunslingers. They were just absolutely airing it out. Sam Howell led the league in attempts last year. Like, do we think the passing volume goes down and Terry takes a hit, or do we think that the efficiency goes up because this is the best passer he's played with ever?
Yeah, I think Terry McLaurin's the latest of guys that has just had horrible quarterback luck since he's been in the league. And you could make the case that Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback he's played with thus far. I tend to go with the latter, though. I think the efficiency goes up. He is an elite runner, Jaden Daniels, that is. And when you have someone like that behind there, throwing the ball, you have to kind of keep someone spying on him at all times, just in case he does take off running when the play breaks down, or if it's a designed run per se. So I do think that defender drawn away opens up opportunities, especially in the middle. Terry McLaurin, I think, will be the favorite target. Will lead the team in targets, I should say. But Jahan Dotson, I think this is good news for him. I don't think he's I don't think he was worth first round draft capital. But I do think Jahan Dotson, I do think the passing volume does go up. I just think the efficiency is better for him. I don't think I know Austin Eckler's there, but Austin Eckler looks like he was running around with bricks on his feet last year, or it just, Zach Ertz, Ben Sennett, Luke McCaffrey could emerge into something, but I just think I want the top two pass catchers in this offense, and that's going to be McLaurin, and I would think it would be Jahan Dotson at this point. And I did just look, Robert Griffin III, 815 rushing yards as a rookie, still the record.
Good for him. Too bad it went the way that it did.
Yeah.
Jahan Dotson, we were just talking about it with wide receiver twos, and you want to talk about the quarterback that is going to be throwing them the ball. I want nothing to do with the wide receiver two with a rookie run-first quarterback in a Cliff Kingsbury offense where all he knows how to run is 4 verts. Jahan Dotson has never crossed, I think it was 16%.
If he gets Rondale Moore treatment, I'm going to lose my mind.
I cannot wait to watch an end around with Jahan Dotson week 1 and just text you, be like, what is going on right now?
Addicted to the screens, yeah. They're just trying to get him the ball, and his yak is just, or his air yards is just 0.
Yeah, I'm looking at what I had originally statted this out as. Like, after Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson 502, the other wide receivers 351, Zach Ertz 320, Ben Sennett 460. Like, it's just a lot of gross totals because they're going to have to spread it around to, these playmakers. But
it feels to me like Vegas is almost baking in a potential injury or that he's not going to play the full season for whatever reason. Those numbers actually seem kind of low, especially the rushing. I don't know. If he's healthy for 17 games or is the starting quarterback for 17 games, 500 rushing yards seems low to me. 3,100 passing yards is 185 yards a game, looking at the math there. And that's like Justin Fields kind of territory, a heavy run volume for a quarterback. So I tend to lean there. I think I'd like to take the over on the rushing if you think he's going to stay healthy. But I don't know. This offense is interesting. I don't think anyone's going to cost you a terrible amount. So maybe kind of a fallback offense to be like, all right, I'll take Terry McLaurin at this point because he's still being valued as like a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, if you want to get those Washington Commanders stacks in underdog leagues here, definitely you can get them. You can get them much later. You can get them a lot cheaper. You can try and work that correlation. And Jaden Daniels, the same number projected for rushing yards as Anthony Richardson.
I'm taking the over on both of those. What the heck are we doing here?
Yeah,
it's health bets. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's health
100%.
bet season.
But all right, let's move on to the actual rushing leaders, Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. I mean, there are other running backs in the room. If you can name them, I will be impressed. But what do we think the rushing split looks like a little bit there? Austin Eckler, in his history, he started a little bit as a satellite back, and then he moved into the lead workhorse. Then he has famously said he doesn't want to carry the ball more than like 200 times. Brian Robinson, meanwhile, he's the classic grinder. He's like, give me 200 carries. I want all of them to be halfback dive on 3rd and 2, and I'm going to give you 3 yards, and you're going to be happy about it. So do we think this is like a 60-40 split, 70-30? Like, how do we project this team moving forward, Colin?
I feel like from a rushing standpoint, it feels like 65-35. I think Brian Robinson is going to actually have a really good year. I don't think we're going to see a ton of Austin Eckler, they're out there on 1st down, even 2nd down. I think he might be relegated a little bit to a 3rd down back. And then, obviously they get the 1st down, he'll stay out there or something like that. But I think actually Brian Robinson's a really good sleeper this year. You have a rookie quarterback there. And I know a lot of people tend to shy away from running backs that have mobile quarterbacks. And I do get that. But I don't also think they want the ball in Jaden Daniels' hands, a ton of times, dropping back and then run if you got nothing. I do think they're going to try to establish a run, so he can keep the defense honest and so he can have some time in the pocket. And Brian Robinson is Alabama. He's a good running back. He's had success in the NFL as well and a good pass catcher too. I do think he can be out there for 3 downs. I just really don't have any interest in Austin Eckler. I know he's going to be the cheapest he's ever been. Other than maybe his, rookie season or that season where Melvin Gordon held out. But I don't know. He just didn't look right last year. I know he was injured, but I'm willing to be wrong on Austin Eckler this year, especially if he's drafted ahead of Brian Robinson, which I don't think he's going to be right now. I don't know what the ADP looks like.
So I was pulling it up while you were talking. As of right now in PPR, Brian Robinson is the running back 34, which just feels hilarious. There's not 34 teams in the league.
I'll take that all day. Yeah.
And then Austin Eckler is the running back 39. What's interesting is in standard it's flipped, but I wonder if that's just like an old ADP that hasn't caught up to the consensus yet. But at running back 34, like he's got Javonte Williams going in front of him, Devin Singletary, Zach, both of the Cincinnati running backs. It's just there's a lot of value to be had if you're just willing to be like, give me 10 fantasy points because you fell into the end zone and you got a couple of yards.
I think this offense is going to be flat out better this year too. I at least think they're going to move into the red zone more often than last year. I don't know if Cliff Kingsbury is the answer long-term there as the offensive coordinator, but as far as year 1 goes, I haven't looked at their schedule much yet, but when they get into the red zone, I actually really like Brian Robinson to be the guy that they want to try on 1st and 2nd attempts here to try to pound it in there. I don't know if Jaden Daniels is going to be trusted, with 3-4 dropbacks and a set of downs to try to, toss the ball into the end zone.
Probably not. But speaking of offenses that should be better, the New York Football Giants, they finally get their franchise quarterback back, Daniel Jones, after he signed an enormous contract. He put up a 2% touchdown rate and a 2.5% interception rate. That is hilarious. That isn't real life. That is playing Madden on all Madden when you're really bad at it. They draft Malik Neighbors, he is the best receiver that Daniel Jones has ever played with. That is not up for discussion. Jalen Hyatt gets another year in the cooker. Wan'Dale Robinson gets another year recovering from his ACL. And then they go ahead and they add Theo Johnson, a great blocker. They add Tyrone Tracy, the 24-year-old running back who was a receiver. Say what you will about that. They get Drew Lock, who could possibly get some snaps in, and Devin Singletary to be supposedly the lead dog in the running back room. Let's dive into this running back room real quick. Is there another guy on the team other than Devin Singletary that you're throwing darts at, or you just feel good grabbing him? He's perpetually underrated because he's not flashy, and you're just going to get volume into your way of a low-end RB2 season.
To me, Devin Singletary is one of those guys that I'm probably drafting as like an RB3 for my team. Mm-hmm. I don't want to start him at all. If I go wide receiver early and I'm like, oh my God, I don't have any running backs and I need an RB2 now. And my RB1 is like, I don't even know, like a Zach Moss, and you're really struggling out there. I get it, but I do think he is a complete volume-based play. This guy doesn't have a single season of 900 yards, let alone 1,000. I know he came on late last year, on a Houston Texans team that we wish was a little bit more pass heavy given the options, and we just want to see CJ Stroud ball out. But he did look actually pretty good. But I do think he's just a volume-based RB2. But when I say RB2, like RB24 is it. I don't really like Devin Singletary because I don't think he's going to score a ton of touchdowns either. I know you can't project that, but with a team like this, I feel like you kind of can.
Yeah, it's tough to really be. Evan, I know you want to crap on the Giants, but I'll crap on them for you. It's tough to see a way for this team to score touchdowns that isn't Malik Neighbors running it in from 70 yards out, or Jalen Hyatt getting over the top, or Wan'Dale Robinson making people like. The touchdowns are in the pass catchers, whether they actually catch the ball or they get an end around. It's not Devin Singletary at the one.
Yeah,
Evan,
no,
what do you think?
it definitely isn't. If I told you that Devin Singletary was going to go for 750 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground this year,
I would believe you.
It's believable.
That's very reasonable.
That's a very flex type of running back right there.
Wouldn't you rather draft someone like with way more upside though that could get onto the field into a more full-time role? Like I don't know. I don't think you're going to have to pay anything to get Devin Singletary, and maybe that's the beauty of it. But if you're starting Devin Singletary, you're in bad shape.
I have the perfect prompt because we were talking about it earlier. Here are 3 running backs back-to-back in ADP right now.
Okay.
Tony Pollard, RB29. Devin Singletary, RB30. Tyjae Spears, RB31. Wouldn't you rather just bet on the Tennessee room and hope that you get your bet right?
I still don't get. I know when I first came on here, I don't get how Tony Pollard is, that low in ADP. I'm going to be drafting Tony Pollard at that ADP pretty much all year, all summer.
Yep. Well, I feel the same way about Tyjae Spears. I think that he is just considerably better than Tony Pollard. But either way, I'm throwing darts at that room rather than grabbing what might be the lead back for the worst offense in the league. But,
yeah, it almost feels like drafting Dameon Pierce last year, which is odd because Devin Singletary ended up taking over for him. But you're like, oh, well, he's the RB1 on the Texans. They could be good. And they were good. But Dameon Pierce was not good. And we could see that here. I mean, it might be better to just throw that dart at Tyrone Tracy very late in your draft, round 15, 16.
Yeah. Evan, let's talk. Oh, you go first. Then we'll talk Dynasty Brain quarterbacks.
Okay, so I was going to say, I think I remember because we were looking at it the other day, and I think the Giants' offensive line over the last 3 years has like a 14% sack rate or something like that.
Daniel Jones got sacked like 30 times, and he barely played 6 games.
Yeah, I mean, their quarterbacks get absolutely destroyed whenever they're running that offense. And the real question is, will Brian Daboll survive the season? Because I think that's a resounding no.
That's the coach of the year 2 years ago. What do you mean?
Win 8 games.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, it's tough in these streets. Like, they need to win 8 to 10 games and do it in a fun way. And then we talk about him staying. And all of those things sound like they won't happen. So
it feels like him and Daniel Jones are going to be, sitting next to each other on the plane out of town. I just, if they even buy them plane tickets, but I actually think, with Daniel Jones, there's some value there, because he can run. But again, with Kyler Murray, when he came back last year, you're like, oh, we know he's going to run. How much? We'll see. Daniel Jones, it's like way down from Kyler Murray of like, oh, we know he can run, but I don't really know if I care to see how much or anything like that. It would actually stink for them if he plays well, because I feel like then they'd be in like purgatory. Do you pay this guy more? Do you keep him around? I should say he's still under that 4-year contract, but or do you have to draft a replacement eventually? It's a mess. It's a very messy situation, but they got to get someone there for Malik Neighbors ASAP.
Yep. Daniel Jones, his contract, the way it's built right now, is that they can cut him after the season, and they will incur $22.5 million in dead cap. However, that would save them because 2025, it's a $30 million base salary with a $41 million cap hit. And then 2026, this isn't real life, $46.5 million for a $58.6 million cap hit. They need to get out of this contract, whether it's extending him with fake stuff and trying to like move him into the mid-tier of contracts, or if it's just straight up cutting him. Like, we've seen teams are more willing to do that and just eat the cap these days. The days of Daniel Jones are numbered, and bringing in Drew Lock into town. Evan, this is what I want to talk to you about. Like, Daniel Jones is currently the quarterback 28 on Keep Trade Cut. Are you the slightest bit interest? Like, do you think there's a bounce back potential? Do you think that he is a usable quarterback, or that's very clear, the writing's on the wall, he's out of here in 2025?
Yeah, I think the writing's on the wall. I mean, especially if Dayball's gone. Like, Dayball's gone, they have a bad season. Just kind of is what it is, and they are moving on. They're re-rolling the dice. They're saying, all right, let's reset the quarterback salary here, and let's try and figure something out.
Evan, you want to hear me say something I've never said on the show before?
I'm smart.
You are. I say that all the time, and I love you. I'd rather have Derek Carr. Derek Carr's going 4 spots.
I'm 100%
later.
with you. Yeah.
So I guess the situation I've thought of here is, how Goff and Stafford were traded almost for each other, with Goff under contract, but the Rams clearly wanted a quarterback upgrade to go, with the team ready to win now. I don't think the Giants are ready to win now, and I don't think anyone wants to take on that Daniel Jones contract. I really feel like the Giants are in a point where they're just going to have to eat the money after this year, and Daniel Jones is going to get an opportunity, almost like Russell Wilson, to go somewhere for super cheap and maybe, revive his career. I don't know where that is right now, because I do think a lot of teams have gotten younger at the quarterback position. There's more coming next year in the draft. He feels like a career backup, or his career is heading towards that, at least at this point.
It just makes me think a lot of the Raiders situation, when the Raiders just had to just get out of the Carr situation, and they just moved on from him. And what
the
did they have
Saints
at
said,
quarterback?
let's get into it.
Yeah. The Saints said, I'm going to jump head first into this. Let me fall on that grenade for you.
Moral of the story: when another team lets a quarterback walk, don't sign him to a 4-year deal. At Atlanta Falcons, at Cleveland Browns, at everybody in the entire league. But at least the Steelers are set at quarterback. Wouldn't it be the funniest quarterback room in the entire league to see Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Daniel Jones next year? It'd be great. But let's talk about bets that you should actually be making, not Justin Fields. Dallas Cowboys 2023, they were 12-5. Their 2024 win total is 10.5. Evan, do either higher or lower of this move you emotionally?
Lower, but not at the price. I mean, minus 180 when I checked it this morning. I'm not paying minus 180 just to take the Cowboys at 10 wins, which I'm going to love when they have 9 wins this season, because that's where I have them slated.
Yep. Colin, what about you? Or are you just running through the schedule real quick?
Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule. It's tough. It is not easy. And I don't think the Cowboys got better. I knew who their opponents were, and it doesn't really even matter where the games are so much. But I know I laid out earlier, they play the Browns and the Ravens, 2 of their first 3 games. I know they have the Lions. Steelers. I know they have the Lions on their schedule somewhere. I know they have the 49ers. I don't know. 11 wins seems like a tough task for this team. And again, talking about coaches that might not survive, Mike McCarthy, I'm looking at you.
Yep. 9-win Cowboys is like a 6-win Giants team. You're on the hot seat immediately.
Yeah.
I would go under if you made me, but again, the price is rough. Eagles 11-6 in 2023. Their 2024 win total 10.5. It's a tough draw for the NFC East. Like, I am a homer as a Steelers fan, but like the AFC North is a tough draw. You don't really want to be playing them as your out of division matchups. Set at 10.5. Under is minus 125. Evan, I'm assuming you're taking over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take the homer pick here, but I'm going to be realistic and say that I think they once again win 11 games.
Okay, that's reasonable. Colin?
Yeah, I think so too. I agree, the tough draw there, but a lot of their road games are winnable games, not the Ravens. I think that's a tough one. But if you look at their schedule later on, they don't travel a ton in the months of November and December. And when they do, it's not far, i.e. Baltimore. So if they get out to a hot start, I'm going to feel really, really good about taking the over here, because I do think even late in the season they can stack together some wins, which they didn't do last year.
I think we're going to know really quickly in that Green Bay game, because those are going to be 2 very good teams starting off the season.
I think a lot of people are going to bet against them in that game.
Schedule makers did a great job. It's going to be very fun to open the season. On one side, they got a really tough draw in the AFC North. On the flip side, they also got the NFC South. So let's give them 4 wins for the NFC South. Let's give them 4 wins between the Giants and the Commanders. Now all they have to do is split the AFC North and the Cowboys, and you're looking at an 11-win season. So I think there's a possibility that they can pull it off. I would also go over. But Vegas is good at their job. These are very good lines. Commanders, they were 4-13 in 2023. We expect them to be a little better in 2024, but their win total only moved up to 6.5. The over is currently at -130. Evan, how are you feeling about that one?
Yeah, that is an over, and it's purely on the hype that Dan Quinn is going to be able to get something out of this defense, because the defense was absolutely putrid last year, especially after they moved off of their DNs, making their trades. It just got that much worse. Who knows what Cliff's going to do? He's a complete wild card as a coordinator. You never know what's going to happen with a Cliff team. So yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. I personally have him pegged for a 7-win season. So that's my personal take.
Okay, Colin?
I actually think it's under, and it all comes down to obviously Jaden Daniels. How good of a player is he? If at any point he's not on the field and Marcus Mariota's coming in, I don't feel great about that. But they have a lot of older veterans that I hope they don't have to rely on, but if they do, 7 wins seems like a tall task. Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner's there.
What's he doing?
Yeah, I just don't feel great about this team in year one of Jaden Daniels, as far as success for the Commanders. But I do think they're on the right track to getting better.
Yep. That makes sense. The way that I feel about this is that the Giants and the Commanders line is set at the same place, and I just believe in Jaden Daniels more than I believe in Daniel Jones.
Sure.
I think whoever wins those matchups is going to sneak their way to 7 wins and feel gross about it. But before we dive into the Giants lines, Colin, I want to give you an opportunity. Tell the people where you're at, where they can find you, and what you're working on.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm at Fantrax. That's fantraxhq.com. We also obviously have the Fantrax app that a lot of people play tons of fantasy sports on. That's baseball right now, golf, football. We even have some NASCAR, F1, and college fantasy football. There is a ton of buzz about college fantasy football right now. I know that NCAA video game is coming out. We're all going to be playing it, NCAA football. But if you think college football as well as you say you do, download the Fantrax app, play your college fantasy football, get your league together. Then you can make the whole weekend full of fantasy football. But yeah, my work is on Fantrax, and looking forward to it. Looking forward to Scott Fishbowl in a couple weeks. I'll be running the Philly live draft. So if you're in the Philadelphia area, July 14th from noon to 4, come check us out at Garage Fishdown in Philadelphia.
Very cool. Love the Scott Fishbowl. Excited to play this year. Last year I drafted Daniel Jones, Nick Chubb, and Mike Williams. So
you won.
Can't get worse. Can't get worse. Yeah, if people are still listening, if you want a hat like the one that I'm wearing, you can head over to FFRPG merch. It's in the little Printify thing, which is super cool. Evan and I have put together some hats for different leagues and some different fun t-shirts. So wear them with pride. Enjoy the show. There's stickers and stuff too if you're not much of a diehard as we are. And then also be sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on YouTube, it means a lot. If you're listening on audio-only platform, give us 5 stars. We love those stars. It's always a pleasure to hear. But speaking of stars, Giants 0 stars. 2023, they were 6-11. Their 2024 win total is set at 6.5. They're given a half win for Daniel Jones coming back. Evan, how do you feel about this one?
Smash, smash, smash the under.
Okay. And Colin?
Yeah, I don't see how the team, based on what they did this offseason, wins one more game than last year. If anything, I'm taking 6, but that's about it.
Yep. I believe in Jaden Daniels more than I believe in Daniel Jones. I believe that you guys were lovely tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. And I believe that our listeners at home rule. Have a lovely day.